So, hello everybody. I was just going to do something special because of a friend of mine who also was a student and who is trying to improve his parsing of the Hebrew verbs. Yeah, and I was thinking that probably would be nice to have such series for those who are having troubles or at least are working on their parsing for Hebrew verbs. And so I will start with my video, which I don't usually do, but I think it makes sense and it's more pleasant to see a face to whatever voice and message. So in this case, I'm just starting with this video and I want to talk a little bit about parsing Hebrew verbs. Obviously, it's not for those who are working on their ivrit, right, on the modern Hebrew, just because this is not necessarily something that you use the language for, right? When you are learning modern Hebrew, you think about speaking, you think about reading, about comprehension, listening, right? The understanding the audio talk and in this language. But for those of us who are doing theological work and who are getting into theological understanding and studying of the biblical Hebrew, and want to be able to read the commentaries, the interlinears, etc. Right? They need to be able to do parsing as well as understand parsing and actually apply it. So we want to start talking about it by saying we have to look at all the verbs, right? Because we're talking about the parsing the verbs only. And so we will need to look at the whole system of the Hebrew verbs. On the one hand, it's scary. On the other hand, whatever grammar one language has, it's really just this grammar. And I want to show it as it as being a ball, okay, of connections that are interwoven and connected in itself. But it's only this size of ball. It's never going to be more than that. Except for those special things that are used in the language right now. We are not talking about modern Hebrew. We're talking about the language that has not been changing for a long time. So this part of the grammar over usual contemporary language is not going to change. We will. So the grammar is just staying the same. We really are looking at the same amount of work. Just from different angles. That's why when I'm doing the courses, a lot of times, not in the seminaries, but private courses, I'm always saying you can use whatever good book on biblical Hebrew you want, right? Because you will be reading about the same things in a different order maybe, or you can take out and read specifically those pages, those chapters that correlate to the topics that we're going over in our course. But the book is a one approach where you will be going over the whole grammar anyways. You will be going over the whole grammar with me because I will tell you each of the topics and I will bring it into one PowerPoint, okay? Sometimes it has a number of slides, okay? And sometimes it needs a series of videos, just like we will be talking about the parsing of Hebrew verbs. But generally, we will still be talking the same things, just bringing them all under one umbrella. That's why I want to say whichever approach you are gonna take, right? You will just hear and talk about the same things, same topics a number of times, which will strengthen your knowledge anyways. You will be able to repeat them. So let's talk about this parsing Hebrew verbs and the main ideas, main points of it. Now let me try to get to the next slide. Yes, here we are. So talking about the parsing in biblical Hebrew, we need to say that it has a number of parts. It has 7 parts, 7 aspects. Here in our first point, we get stem, conjugation, GN, person, gender, number, root or lexical form, depending on what is being taught in your seminary. And the last thing is translation of the verb used in the text. So in a sense, it's really just bringing or taking a meaning out of everything that has been named before, right? So applying all of this parsing, stem, conjugation, person, gender, number, root or lexical form. What does it mean, right? So the translation of the verb used in the text will give us not a translation of the root lexical form, but the actual translation of the verb that is being parsed. So, which means that this is going to be our mighty 7. Means it's 7 points. So if you will forget one of these points, to mention just one of these things, or these aspects, otherwise there will be a reduction in your grade. And to do that, to mention each one of them, what helps is to have an order to them. This, what you see on your screens right now is the order, right? We're saying stem, conjugation, person, gender, number, root, lexical form. Again, you will decide which one or which one is being taught by your professor. And the translation of the verb used in the text. Don't forget any of it. And then let's see what we can talk about, because this is a lot, right? And it's a lot to figure out and it's a lot to remember. And some things, first of all, are just easier. Other things are just obvious. Some roots will be obvious and you look at the word and you know right away this is kum, or this is mut, or this is ra'a, to see, etc., etc. So some verbs are just used more often and they are being seen by you often enough to be remembered. And then other things you will have to figure out. So on the one hand, you'll have to give it time, but on the other hand, you do not have to start with stem. Sometimes it will not be the stem that is going to be your first thing to figure out about the word, but generally the order is going to be really helpful to not forget any part of the parsing. But we are going to start with a stem in the sense that we want to start with kal. Kal or pal, which is kal for light, right? And pa'al is actually just the root of the verb that is used to name all the binyanim, all the stems. We'll start with this major stem. Talking about this stem, we'll talk about all the conjugations that actually will appear in every other stem as well. So this way, if we talk about conjugations today, and you learn those forms, as soon as you've learned those forms, you will be at a great advantage, because in every stem you'll have the same conjugations with the same parts that are going to be unchangeable. So if you have learned them once, you're pretty much set to figure out the conjugation even in a different stem. Then again, we'll talk about person, gender, and number. And remember, there are 3 persons when we talk about ourselves. This is the first person talking about me or us. Second person is always talking to someone, face to face, eyes to eyes, or to a group of people. And the third person is always talking about somebody else, so he, she, or they, them. Then gender, there is Hebrew. In Hebrew, there is masculine and feminine. And number, there is always a possibility for singular or plural, but do not forget that there is always also a dual. Okay, so it's something that comes up in pairs will also appear in the text. Let's see what's our next point, stems. Then we'll talk about all the other stems and the way they differ, how they look, how different they are, why, what they mean, how they look like. The next thing is going to be root or lexical form. You will have to work with it or write the parsing according to what your professor says, but you will be able to recognize it in the interlinears or whatever is being used in your software, maybe, depending on what is going to be used, right? So you'll do fine having just the 3 letters or having the actual lexical form with the nekudot, with the vowel signs attached. At this point, I also want to say that in the beginning, right now, we're going to look at kal, right? And all the conjugations, also talking about the person, gender, number, how to, what is what, to make sure that we have learned them for kal, the conjugations, and the way the verbs, verbal forms look with a specific person, gender, and number. But we mustn't forget that there's always a possibility for weak verbs. And at this point here, we will also talk about the weak verbs and weak roots and what is happening to them in different stems. And the last point that I want to mention is the translation of the parsing. This is the last part. Again, do not do the translation of the root or lexical form. Sometimes you cannot figure out the root. It might be difficult, depending on what translation you're doing. Maybe it's a rare verb and you're not sure, and you just really do not have a dictionary or a lexicon to work with, and you making just putting things together and coming up with ideas. Sometimes, because of everything else, you can translate a verb of some verb and say this is a future because it's an imperfect, and in this case it works as a future. So future, you will do something if we are talking about second person masculine plural, or in this case PL, right, or P for plural. So y'all will do something, right? And I'm not sure, even if I find out this and if I have figured out this root properly, I'm not sure about its translation, for example. That could happen. But you still can be translating part of it and saying that this is some action that I'm not sure about this root, what it means, but the translation talks about you all will do something. Do not just leave open spaces. Suggest something, okay? Think what it could be if it's second person masculine plural. Okay.